Yeah, the next thing I wanted to touch upon this evening is that earlier this week I put up a post on Facebook that caused a bit of a stir, and I want to follow up with a conversation about this, Andy. You know what? I'm even going to open up the phone lines if somebody wants to call in. What's our number, man? 347-205-9407. If you want to chime in on this, and we'll talk about it. But maybe it's just me. I don't know. But it seems like there are a lot of people as of late getting into the morph madness on reticulated pythons especially.
I don't know, man. They've been going morph crazy for a while.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe it's just getting my head out of my ass in the last couple months or whatever.
Because you've been too busy poking at the ball pythons.
At the ball pythons.
That the retics kind of snuck up right behind you.
But seriously, like there's just this morph madness going on for the retics now, and everybody wants like some kind of genetic mutation or something. Or I should say, I don't even know if people want them. I just know that people are producing them. And people are producing all these crazy combos and these things. So as the popularity and the desire, oh wow, wine's kicking in. As the popularity and the desire for these new
strap in, kids,
grow, you can best bet that more and more people are going to be breeding their snakes because of this. Because let's face it, even with the ball pythons, nobody drops 5 figures on a snake to have it as a pet. Everybody who is like first on the morph line is going to want to breed it. And here's my question. My question is this to you. Where do all of these snakes go? Because honestly, not everyone is equipped to deal with a creature that easily grows in excess of 15 feet long, and fewer people are able to keep multiple animals of this size. On top of that, so that's what scares me. It's like, where do they go? I know that a large portion of them are being shipped overseas. I mean, and let's face it, there's realistically there's like 2, maybe 3 guys. That are pumping out
just
huge numbers,
just
of
disgusting numbers.
Disgusting numbers is correct, and especially from out west. It's crazy because they're pumping just mad numbers of snakes out there, and it's like shit. Those snakes are all going to grow, and they're going to be huge. And where are they going? Where are they going? They're not all going to Europe. I mean, sure, a decent amount of them go, but these snakes they eat a lot of food. They require, strong cages. They also require the presence of more than one person to properly care for them for safety reasons. Because if you own a retic, that's even over 12 feet. Let's say 4 meters long. You shouldn't be handling that snake by yourself. If you've ever seen the bite of a reticulated python, man,
I would even venture to say any of the larger snakes.
Yes,
like retics, berms. Even larger red tails and Colombian boas. The females can get pretty large, and they're heavy as hell.
Yeah, it's definitely best management practice to have more than one person in the room with you when you are servicing animals of this size. Because if there's an incident, you are not getting this animal off of you by yourself. It's not going to happen. On top of the fact that, getting back to the retic bites, man, they have been compared to chainsaw accidents.
Oh my God, yeah. You've shown me a few. They're horrible.
Massive trauma from their teeth. It's a strong bite in this animal. Of course, everybody's first reaction is to pull back. So you just have this like incredible tearing and ripping that goes on, and it's horrible. And so obviously, not everybody's equipped to have these animals. And that's a scary, scary thing, man. Where are they going and who are they going to? They also, another thing to take into consideration is that they reproduce at an astonishing rate. Ball pythons, all right, ball pythons suck, we all know that. But, you're going to get like 6 to 8 eggs from a female.
Yeah.
Like, every year if you pump the shit out of them or whatever.
Right.
So let's say, a ball python female in 10 years is going to put out, 60 to 80 eggs, right? Like a super productive animal, that is not power fed and anything like that, right? So, okay, so 60 to 80 eggs in a lifetime. Now, reticulated python, that's one fucking clutch, man. One clutch.
Yep.
25 to 80 eggs, depending on the size of the animal and how frequently they're bred. Dude, I'm having a clutch of 80 eggs, man. Like, okay, realistically, let's be realistic. 50.
Okay.
Dude, can you, who's going to buy a clutch of 50 snakes? 50 big-ass snakes. It's crazy.
Not me.
What are we setting ourselves up for, man? You know, like, are breeders scrutinizing who they sell to?
I think when you're one of these larger breeders that are doing the mass, breeding and laying and incubating that these couple guys are doing, I don't think they necessarily have the time, or I guess maybe I'm phrasing it wrong, but I don't think they care because they're just pumping out so much. Now, a little independent guy that does it for himself, that does it because he enjoys doing it, he should care. I'm not saying he's gonna,
right.
but he should care.
Or he's more likely to care.
Right. The larger breeders, should they care? Absolutely. They have enough people, they have enough staff working for them where they should be caring where these animals go. But just like as you said at the beginning of this segment, they're going overseas. They're not in the States. Most of them are not in the States. They're going overseas for meat and for fashion.
Well, no. I don't think the morphs are doing that.
You don't think so?
Nah, the morphs aren't going to go for that because, dude, if somebody's going to sell, you're talking about like $5,000, $10,000 snakes. Nobody's going to sell that for meat or skin, and plus you have to grow them up for those things. No one's going to buy a baby, a neonate for meat or skin. The reticulated python is, in its native habitat, one of the more commonly exported snakes, and the vast majority of them, like 90 to 95% of them, are exported for what you're talking about, for the skin trade and for meat used locally. And those big animals are usually wild-caught ones.
Right, okay.
Almost entirely wild-caught ones.
You mean they're not like the normal ones that are sent over?
No, because nobody's growing them up. Nobody's farming them per se. Retics are a pretty common snake in over most of their range, so it's really easy to kind of grab a couple of natives and get a dugout.
Just slaughter the shit out of them.
Yeah, and just fucking go grab a 10-foot snake and, and bring it back in, and they get paid by the pound or whatever. And then they, they bring these things back to their warehouses and stick hoses up their asses and in their mouths. And it's true. And they fill them up with air or water to stretch out the skin, and then they fucking skin them while they're still alive. It's horrendous shit. But, that being said, a small percentage of those are still, coming into the pet trade. But why? Think about that. Why? Why the hell are they still importing retics? And they are. Because
why are they still importing so many of the common animals that are being readily available?
And this is the shit that kills me, because this is the shit that's going to fuck up the hobby. Because we just don't care. Why are we importing ball pythons? Plus, there's probably like a 90% mortality rate on those goddamn things anyway, because they just
imports,
suck. Yeah, they ship them out of the egg, and they're not feeding, they're not adjusted. Some people sell them by the bag already before they're even settled out and shit.
Yep.
So it's ridiculous. So why are we even doing that as an industry? These are the things we have to look at, because these are the things that are going to come back and bite us on the ass and bite us hard. If PETA or any of these other HSUS, if they get hold of that data and they see that we're still importing thousands of animals that are commonly reproduced in the country, there's no other reason than just being, a money-grubbing bastard, because it's all about the money in these situations. So, obviously we're digressing a little bit here, and we're talking about the captive breeding animals, but, I would say, I don't know the numbers. I can't even speculate on them, but I would say the vast majority of them are not being exported just because you have homegrown breeders who are popping them out now. There's a couple dudes out there that are becoming pretty well known for breeding reticulated pythons, and these guys are not shipping the shit overseas.
No, they're not.
The prehistoric pets, the Bob Clark, they're shipping their shit overseas. They're going to Ham. They're going to the European shows. They're going to the Japanese shows, even though the Japanese don't buy that many, because Japanese, if you've ever seen where they live in these little tiny
What about a company like Nerd? They do a lot of retics as well.
Nerd does a lot of retics. I don't know where Nerd is going. I don't know where Nerd goes with it, but I think Nerd's probably more domestic than anybody, because he's got really kind of cutting edge stuff. So everybody wants Kevin's stuff.
I'm just thinking because he's one of the bigger breeders too.
No, you're right. You're right. And like I said, I don't know what percentage goes over, but I know Bob Clark is probably 80-90% overseas.
Yeah.
Prehistoric pets, I don't know where the fuck their animals are going, because they're hatching out fucking dozens of animals.
Yeah, the pictures they post of their tubs just full of babies.
Dude, on a weekly basis, man. They're on a weekly basis, they're hatching out dozens and dozens and dozens of snakes.
But what's the fecundity rate of those things?
Every year, you're talking about a potential clutch of, let's say, an average. Let's say a 12-foot female is going to spit out an average of about maybe 30, 40 eggs at least, and then that goes up exponentially as the animal is bigger.
Do they have to be 12 feet in order to breed?
No, they don't.
So they can be 6 foot.
Yeah, they can
5
be
foot.
Not so small. I mean, there are also the dwarfs that will breed.
Let's talk about just the regular
Yeah, the regular run-of-the-mill
20-foot ones.
Yeah, I mean, those things, I don't know what the preferable breeding size is, but if somebody's going to plan on breeding their animals, first of all, they're going to stuff the shit out of it, and they're going to grow it.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to grow it as much as they can, because the bigger it is, the more eggs the thing's going to spit out. So, I would say, realistically, from what I've seen, even on the homegrown breeder, you're talking about an average of maybe 40, 50 eggs, which is absurd. And they're breeding more than one female. So you're talking about somebody's popping out, maybe 150 babies a year. Like, what the fuck? 150 babies a year from, the guy doing it in his basement. And let's face it, I've been to the shows. We see these dudes selling this shit. Yep. They don't care. They're selling it I've seen people walking off the tables. I've seen the transactions occur. Yep. And it literally goes down like, I want this snake, how much, blah, blah, blah. Thank you, money exchange, out the door. That's it. There's no, breeders need to take on, no. And I think that breeders really need to take on the same role as the responsible venomous breeders in the U.S. The people like Al Kritz, these other guys who sell venomous snakes in the U.S., they're doing it right. They won't sell to you if you're a minor.
Yep.
They won't sell to you if you're live in a state where it's illegal. Mm-hmm. So they'll usually require something like a driver's license from you. Right. To check where you're from and stuff. That's what these guys need to be doing, because I've seen kids walking out, dude, at Hamburg. I have seen kids walking out with retics. Yep. And it's like, oh my God, what the fuck is gonna happen in 6 months?
And it sucks to feel that way too, because you're already prejudging the kid. You don't know what he has at home. You don't know what his parents have. He may have already a retic. He may already have one retic, and he could be, just looking to add another one. He may have the space for it, and those could be the only two animals. But unfortunately, we don't know that. So our natural, immediate reaction is to say, what the fuck?
Yeah, and honestly, myself as a kid, okay, if I went back to the 12-year-old Danny, I would probably buy her, a retic as a kid, because I wouldn't know any better. Right. But even myself, I know that I would not have been able to handle that animal. Right. Especially after a year's time. I mean, if you maintenance feed a retic in a year, you're still talking at 6 feet.
And what do you specifically mean, for those who don't know? What do you mean by maintenance feed?
By maintenance feeding, I'm talking about feeding an animal at kind of the very minimum, to where you feed an animal and then you feed it again when it starts to become active. See, retics will do this thing is they'll eat, and then a couple days later, when they're ready for more, they become very active and they start moving. And that's how they differ from a lot of things.
They start hunting.
Yeah, they start hunting. That's how they differ from a berm. A berm is a little more of a sessile, sedimentary animal. A reticulated python, if you don't feed them, they screw themselves up. They nose the cages. They start rubbing their faces on shit, trying to escape and try to get out. So you have to feed an animal like that. So even at maintenance feeding, that animal is going to grow. It's going to grow in excess of 5 or 6 feet,
as opposed to the fat berms that just kind of lay there.
Yeah, exactly. We'll sit there. But the thing is very few people maintenance feed a retic, and weekly feeding is not maintenance feeding. Weekly feeding is still kind of pumping them up. So if you feed a retic on a weekly basis, you're looking at an animal that's going to be 6 to 8 feet in the first year, which is already a handful. By the second year, you're looking in excess of 10 feet, which is, a threat. It's a potentially dangerous animal. And I hate to throw that word out, because I know people are going to freak out about me labeling that. But a reticulated python is a potentially dangerous animal. It can inflict some serious damage, and it is completely capable of killing somebody. If they're not careful, it can happen. It can happen. And these are the things that are really scaring me, man. In a time of increased legislation, we have to kind of ask ourselves about the ethical values behind this. Are we killing ourselves as a hobby, as an industry? I think so. Because in a time of this kind of legislation that's popping up, you don't see these guys going to the fight, honestly. I see some of these bigger producers as just going to the bank. And I hate to say that, but
I don't know enough about what they do behind the scenes, so I'm not going to say anything about it, but I'd like to hope that because of the stamp that they have on the industry, on the hobby, whatever you want to call it today, I think that their vested interest would suit them to get behind and fight the legislation. But I don't know.
I don't know if they're doing that, because I think everyone kind of sees what's coming down the pipe for reticulated pythons. And I hate to take this view, but I think people don't give a shit, because they're probably going to be illegal. They're probably going to hit the Lacey Act just like the berms did. if legislators get their way in 5 years, I give it 5 years tops before we start to see restrictive legislation on those big snakes. Because first of all, the fact that they singled out the berm is a joke, because a berm is literally like, the goddamn slug of the giant snake world. Like,
it's the ball python of the giant snake world.
Seriously, they're mellow. They are not wily for the most part. They tend to be very happy to be fat little bastards living in their cages.
Unless they're younger. When they're younger, they're a little bit more spry. But as they get older and overfed, as most people do with them, they just become lazy, fat shit.
They chill. And that's the irony in the fact that, there's all this fear of big snakes, and the retic is the first one. I mean, and the berm is the first one to be taken out when, like, it should have been the retic. You can send your hate mail to Danny at UrbanJunglesRadio.com. But it should have been the retic. That is not, that's not a child's pet. It's not.
But there's no retic problem in Florida, is there?
That's true. Well, I'm sure that there are a few.
I'm sure there is,
about,
but it's not. It's not as sexy. To put that out there.
And they're not making.
I mean, Florida is just a horrible state for all of these exotics.
Florida's a nightmare. I mean,
like everything and anything that's come in through that state has established itself in that state.
I just speaking to Tom Crutchfield, who we were talking to earlier. He just posted a little while ago about how he's sitting in his backyard listening to tokay geckos call all around him. Like it's another world.
That's great. But you're not in Asia.
it's a whole.
I wonder if Florida has any natural animals anymore, like native animals.
Yeah, I mean, and there's give and take. The natives probably to some extent, even localized populations.
Besides alligators.
Yeah, besides the alligators, but some of the native stuff are probably doing okay, and they are taking advantage of the new.
They move north.
Food source. Yeah, they're moving north at a rapid rate. The Burmese python is coming for your ass. No, so I don't know. There's just all sorts of really fucked upness in this. I don't even know how to explain it. Yeah. Like, it's just really screwed up right now, and I can't help but think that we're doing it to ourselves once again. The reptile keeper is its own worst enemy, and retic guys need to wake up, man. You're gonna lose your cash cow really soon. You need to wake up and you need to cut this. You need to cull this. Like, I don't know if it's going to be controlling your breeding populations or just being, even just as little just being a lot more strict with who you sell to. Make sure you're checking IDs and checking legalities. They are already illegal, as some of our people are pointing out in our chat room. They're already illegal in some states over a certain size. In Canada, you can't have retics.
No, you can't. You can't have anything over, 3 meters, right?
3 meters, 9 feet.
Yep.
Anything that gets over that size, you can't have. Even if it's a baby, you cannot possess it, because it has that capability.
Boa constrictors, right? For the most part, red tail,
I don't think
Colombian.
Really.
You don't think so?
Nah, I don't really get that big, but I don't know if they're out. I
don't
know
if get upwards like 10, 11.
That's like a miracle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they
all
like
right.
6 to 8 feet, I think is.
All right, so automatically then no retics,
no
berms,
no
anacondas,
no like olive pythons,
no olives,
fistines.
What about doomerals?
I don't know.
Because they come kind of close, right?
Yeah, they're kind of up close there. I don't know. We'll have to ask some of our Canadian peeps to chime in on that. So I don't know, but it's there's obviously legislation in place locally in some of these situations, and it's only going to get worse. So my advice is, retic people, wake the fuck up. Like, stop worrying about the cash cow and really start thinking about the hobby for once.
Attention, jungle junkies.